Hi, thanks for tuning in. I'm Patty and this is Patty's Lupus Journey. I am going to discuss how I was officially diagnosed with lupus. This is a part 2 video. If you would like to see the part 1 video, it will be listed below. In that video, I discuss all the symptoms and all the tests that had occurred up to this point that I'm going to be speaking about today. So I will leave that information in the description box below if you want to go check that out first. Off with the first video was I had been in the hospital for about a week. I was diagnosed with undifferential connective tissue disease, and during that time I had what is called a muscle biopsy. That is where they take a small piece of your muscle and they put it on a slide and they review it, and it helps to determine different diagnoses and what is going on with the muscle itself. After the procedure, it was determined that I had developed a blood clot where the surgery was performed. So in order to remove the clot, they had to take me back into surgery and open things back up to remove the clot. In doing so, I had what was called nerve entrapment, and that was where a piece of my nerve had suffered some injury from removing the blood clot. It made it difficult for the nerve to connect with my muscle to tell it what to do, and I was already very weak, so it just really amplified everything. I also had quite a bit of swelling after the procedure, and I honestly don't know if it was from the procedure or the procedure of taking the blood clot out. I had significant swelling in which my ankle was about double its size, and I was required to wear compression stockings. I did develop severe stretch marks on my ankle, and to this day they are there. I don't like looking at them, but in some people would say they're warrior scars. I hope at some time I will get to feeling that comfortable and confident about that. That being said, when I got home, it was very difficult for me to move around because I had a hard time lifting my leg when I needed to walk. I was also very fatigued, not only from the disease itself that was happening to me, but I was also on a large dose of a medication called prednisone. That in itself causes fatigue, along with a lot of other symptoms. I'm home, senior year, again, living at home with my parents, well, with my mom, and now I'm having a hard time moving around and getting where I need to be. So I was required to use a walker. I used that walker to get from each room. Then when we went out, not only was I required to use the walker in the house, I needed to use a wheelchair when we left the house because my endurance was so poor and my inability to move very fast or far because of the problem with my leg. It was very difficult for me to get around. And I did need to get things like new clothes because I had gained quite a bit of weight and other activities. So there you have it. Wheelchair and walker, my new best friends. What every teenager wants, right? Not. What had happened was I had started having severe discomfort in my throat, otherwise known as heartburn, and it was so uncomfortable that I was not able to lay back because it made it worse. So I was propping up a lot of pillows. It was becoming difficult for me to take my medication because I was then becoming nauseated. The other symptom that happened at the same time was eating was very difficult. Sitting at the table, sitting up in a chair and doing what you usually do when you eat dinner was very fatiguing to me. And sometimes I would need to nap just so I could sit at the dinner table. True fact. Then you have to include chewing your food. Believe it or not, that takes energy, and that takes muscles, and that takes work. So chewing my food was difficult, sitting at the table was now difficult, and then swallowing became difficult. After swallowing, getting my food to move was difficult. I felt like food was getting stuck. And the weaker I got, the more severe those symptoms happened. I then discovered that I had a new doctor to include to my list, and that was a gastroenterologist. And actually I'm very blessed because I still have that doctor today, and he has been quite a lifesaver. Basically what he did was he did what was called an endoscopy, and basically they take a scope. You're under a general anesthesia, and they take a scope and they put it in your mouth, down your throat, through your esophagus, and to your stomach. And in doing that, they can either biopsy the tissue to see what is going on. They also have a good look at the area. They can see if you have an ulcer, inflammation, all kinds of things. For me personally, it was noted that I had severe GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disorder, basically known as heartburn, reflux. I know it's coined a bunch of different words, but that was another official diagnosis was GERD. Alright, moving on, because there's medicine for that, right? I was then given some medication to help with the acid so that it wouldn't be burning the tissue in your esophagus and the tissue in your stomach are different. And the acids from your stomach are not meant to be up in your esophagus. Therefore, I needed a medication to help prevent that from happening and to neutralize the acid. The other test that was formed was called esophageal manometry. That was not fun at all, let's be honest, but it was very helpful in diagnostics. Basically, that you lay flat and they numbed the back of my throat with a numbing agent. They used a very small tube, similar to an NG tube, but I think maybe even a little bit smaller. Not sure on that one. But they would take the tube, stick it through my nose, down the back of my throat, into my esophagus. Yeah, it's not as fun as it sounds. Then they would move it, pull it out slowly in increments. And when they did that, it was able to measure the contractions that were happening in my esophagus. And there's certain muscles that need to work. There's both voluntary and involuntary muscles, and that works to help. Once you chew your food, you use muscles, believe it or not, to chew your food, and that's the first part of digestion. And after you chew your food, you swallow your food, and after you swallow your food, then it goes into your esophagus, through your esophagus, and down through to your stomach. Well, doing so takes different muscles, and what it told me, or told my doctor, is that the muscles in my esophagus were not working properly. The lower third of my esophagus, which is the part of the muscles that push the food into your stomach, were very weak, and therefore I required to have different ways that I ate. One, I chewed smaller. I chewed my food in smaller portions. I drank water with every sip, and that helped to push the food down. And I did not lay down after I ate, or lay on my side, or I sat upright, just to help, so that gravity had that ability to help assist my food into going into my stomach. And that really does help. After the manometry, I had another milestone in my life, and that was my high school graduation. Something that I had really looked forward to, and I knew at this point it was going to be very difficult for me to get my diploma as far as walking on the stage. I did not want to be in a wheelchair. I did not want to I just did not want it. I already was very self-conscious because I had gained so much weight, at least 50 pounds at that time, and I had a classic sign. It was called a moon face, and it is a side effect of the medication prednisone. And so by doing so, my face was just very tight and swollen. I had gained, like I said, 50 pounds. I just didn't even look like myself. I didn't look like myself. I didn't feel like myself. And the last thing I wanted to do was show up at graduation in a wheelchair. It's just, looking back at it now, I realize it wasn't a big deal, but it was. To me, that's not what I wanted. I worked really hard with a physical therapist on my leg, trying to improve the mobility so that I could get through the stage. I still had very poor endurance, and it required me to take a nap prior to graduation. My graduating class had close to 1,000, maybe a little more students in it at the time, and our graduation ceremony lasted around 4 hours. That's a long time, especially when you're ill. So I took a nap before, and then I showed up to graduation in a wonderful wheelchair, and I needed that because there was no way I could walk around. But what I was able to accomplish that day through the work of physical therapy was walking across the stage. I had them push my wheelchair to the stage. I then walked to get my diploma, got back in the wheelchair, and left. It was a personal goal, and I succeeded in that. At that time, it was really important to make small victories. If you're going through this right now and you're in the process of being diagnosed with lupus or any chronic illness or something that doesn't have a name yet, but you have a lot of symptoms that are limiting your ability to do things, it's really important to find the smallest goals, to find achievements to set for yourself. And honestly, that really helped me to keep pushing forward and to work harder for my next goal and my next goal. And truly, truly, it helped me push through to making some really big accomplishments in life. So to back up, I now have the diagnosis undifferential connective tissue disease, esophageal dysmotility, and GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disorder. So 3 new friends of diagnoses, and there's more to come. Other tests that were performed were skin biopsies. I had developed some rashes, and not only a muscle nerve conduction test, but a nerve conduction test. Basically, they tested the muscles and the nerves. They looked for markers such as how the nerves reacted and responded to my muscles, how much inflammation was involved. And then I was given yet another diagnosis, and that was dermatomyositis. So dermatomyositis, undifferential connective tissue disease, esophageal reflux disorder, and esophageal dysmotility. Yeah. So the list keeps going, the symptoms keep changing, but blood work was also changing at the time, and we were trying different medications. I deferred going away to college the first year. I did attend the community college so that I could be close to home and get the assistance I needed and the rest that I needed, and not be away from home, away from my doctors at such a critical time. After all the tests were coming in and the blood tests, I then was determined that I did have officially lupus. I was told when they diagnosed me with lupus that I would still have, it's possible that I still have overlapping other diseases, such, with symptoms like my esophagus was similar to scleroderma. Different things were prevalent for different diseases in the undifferential connective disease order. Basically, I had like a lupus overlap syndrome, but for diagnostic reasons and all things going forward, it was easier to give me the official diagnosis lupus because I did fit all the criteria, and a lot of the treatments for lupus are similar to everything that was affecting me. And I had all the criteria and developed the classic butterfly rash. So now I had a diagnosis. I had several diagnoses, but the main diagnosis was systemic lupus erythematosus. I really hope this video helps you if you are newly diagnosed or you are diagnosed and just looking to not be alone in the world with an autoimmune disease, and I hope this finds you well. If you have any questions for me, please leave a comment in the description box below. I would love to hear from you, and I will return your question with an answer. And I will continue to do more videos on the basics of lupus because this is May, and May is Lupus Awareness Month. Bye. Thanks for watching.